Hello, my name is John Coleman, and I'm going to be talking on this film about supporting the well-being of teenagers. And what I'm going to cover is, first of all, I'm going to have a bit of an introduction to the topic. I'm then going to talk about the needs of teenagers, and in particular focus on well-being and what we can do to ensure that they manage this stage of life as best as possible. I'm then going to talk about emotion, managing emotion, how we handle emotions, difficult emotions, and so on. And then I'm going to end by talking about what parents and carers can do to contribute to or ensure that young people manage the ups and downs of this stage of life as best as they can. So let's start with an introduction. I think everyone's aware that the pressures on young people today are very substantial. We know that schooling and the demands of teachers and the worries associated with tests and exams and achievement are really substantial. But we've also lived through a period of remarkable anxiety in relation to the pandemic. And so those two things really have contributed to making life challenging for young people. I think also this recent period has raised awareness of mental health. There's been much more discussion of mental health issues. I think schools are much more aware of this, and the pandemic has certainly had an effect on many, many young people. For some, being at home and not having contact with friends and so on in person has been very difficult. But some have found the experience of worrying about health, the anxieties about parents and grandparents, the sort of sense of threat that's come with the pandemic has been very difficult for some to manage. I think that that has played into worries that parents have about their young people because of the greater awareness of the mental health needs of young people, and because of a much wider discussion about well-being, what well-being means, and so on. The sense for parents and carers is that there's a lot more to worry about, a lot more discussion about websites that might encourage young people to self-harm or to develop eating disorders, a much greater awareness of the issues around mental health and of well-being. Have things changed? I think that the circumstances that everyone has faced certainly has led to an increase in young people and families seeking help. And that's been more difficult to access, of course, because all the factors associated with COVID have meant that support has been more difficult to obtain. Everyone is aware that the mental health services are overloaded, and many families really struggle with knowing where to go and how to seek help. So I think things have changed in the sense that there's more awareness, but there are also more young people facing challenges and struggles. I think we have to put this in context, because what we need to think about also is what is this stage all about? What are the needs of young people during this transition from childhood to adulthood? And you will, many of you will have seen the film that I did about the brain, about the teenage brain. And if you saw that, you will know that this is a period of major reorganization and restructuring of the brain. And there are many, many positives that come from that, but there are also some challenges. And there's a time when that reorganization leads to uncertainty, confusion, and young people finding it hard to manage the sorts of feelings that they experience. Now, I've developed a sort of framework which I think parents and carers find helpful in understanding this stage and what young people need. And I've called this the stage framework. And there are two reasons why I call it the stage framework. One, because it is a stage, and it's a stage that young people progress through. They will not stay the same. They are going through a process of change. And many parents feel that when things aren't so good and when communication breaks down and so on, that's it, that's how life is going to be. But of course, it isn't. It's a process. And so I called my framework the stage framework because I want to emphasize this process that's going on and that change is happening all the time. But the second reason is that the 5 letters of the word STAGE all represent different things that are important for teenagers. So the S stands for the significance of adults. And one of the things that adults often feel is that they don't have a role anymore, that they're not important, and young people are very good at pushing that message. But everything we know tells us that parents and carers of teenagers are just as important as parents and carers of younger children. They're just important in a different way, but they are absolutely central. So don't ever think, and don't let anyone else think, that parents and carers are not important during the teenage years. The second thing is the T in stage, and that represents two-way communication. So very often, communication between parents and teenagers is one way. That is, parents are either asking questions, interrogating, or nagging, telling the young person what they should be doing. But that isn't very good communication. We need, if we want to really get on with our teenagers, we need two-way communication. That means listening as well as talking. So really listening to what the young person is saying and wanting to say, that really will help better communication, but it'll also help better relationships. So two-way communication, listening as well as talking. The third letter is A, and that's for authority. How do we exercise authority during this period? And of course, it isn't the same as the way we exercise authority when they were younger. So providing structure is very important. However much teenagers kick against it, they do need a structure. They need boundaries, but they also need those boundaries to be combined with warmth and support and love. But also, teenagers need expectations set. They need to know what is expected of them, because if they don't have expectations set, how can they know if they're doing well or not? They also need to be helped to become more independent. So all those things are important, and they will help with the managing authority. The fourth letter is G, and that stands for generation gap. And the reason I put that in is because growing up today is just so different from when you, as parents or carers, were growing up. So understanding, don't judge based on your own experiences. Recognize that the pressures are just so different today, and help your young person recognize that without using your own experiences, try and learn from them as to what it's like to be growing up today. And then the last letter, the fifth letter, is E, and that stands for emotion. And so there's, in a way, that's almost the most important one. So young people, and I'm going to come on to talking about emotion in a minute, young people struggle with their feelings at this time. But of course, having teenagers also creates powerful feelings in the adults around them. Those feelings may be to do with frustration, irritation, even anger, but also the sadness sometimes, the sense that you've lost that cuddly child. And many parents I talk to talk about guilt and shame, that they're not managing very well. They're not doing as they would hope because the teenager looks as if they're really struggling. So learning to manage your own feelings as well as those of the young person is, of course, a key challenge for adults. So the stage framework, I think, does help us all understand what this stage is about, but also some of the things that parents and carers can really recognize and will help them in their relationship with their young people. I want to move on now, and it's appropriate to move on to talk about emotion, because part of the, I suppose, the key element of well-being is learning to manage your feelings, emotion regulation. And we know from understanding the brain that there are times when that's quite difficult. There are lots of unexpected feelings that the young person will experience. The sort of sense of anxiety about what it's all about, the sense of what's the point of it, sadness, worry about friendships, but also that sense that if things go wrong, it's the end of the world, the sort of catastrophic feelings. And you all, if you've got teenagers at home, you'll all know that, you get a bad mark on a test or whatever, well, you might as well give up. That's the end. Bury me now, one teenager said to me once. So there's those sorts of feelings too. And of course, what's happening in the brain makes the managing of those feelings more difficult. Now, parents and carers can play a big role here, really important, helping young people, understand what's happening in their brain, and also modeling how you manage feelings. That also can really, really help. And accepting young people, not criticizing, not feeling putting young people down or treating them as if they're just inferior beings, but helping them recognize that this is a stage, that this is something they're going to go, and they're going to get better at managing those feelings. I've talked about the fact that this is a time of stress and anxiety. And one of the things that is really interesting that's come out of research is that young people talk about this time in their lives as a time of stress. And when you ask them what that's about, adults will mostly think they're going to say it's social media, but actually they don't say that at all. What they talk about is pressure of school. And this is something I think that has become much more prevalent today, that pressure from teachers, all the stress associated with homework, revision, exams, tests, and so on. That's what young people find extremely stressful. Number two is family. Relationships not going well, conflict with parents and carers, and so on. Number three is friends and friendship. And then social media comes right down at the bottom of the list. So this is another thing that adults really need to understand, that it is a stressful time, and young people do experience anxiety, and it's our role as adults to help them with that. So what are the strategies for well-being, because this is really about helping young people with their well-being. So learning how to relax is one part of this. So, and all of you may have ideas about how to do that, whether it's breathing, whether it's learning techniques, meditation. Exercise is very important. Some people find music very useful. When I've talked to teenagers about how they manage anxiety and how they cope, you get a huge range of different responses. So it isn't the same for everyone. And I think one of the important things that adults can do is to explore with young people what it is that helps them when they feel anxious, when they feel stressed, and explore with them the best coping strategies for them. We all have different coping strategies, but the key thing here is that we can develop coping strategies. So for young people, particularly the younger groups, I think they haven't really thought about that. That they get sort of overwhelmed, if you like, with difficult feelings. And what we have to do really is to help them recognize that we can do something about this. There are coping strategies, and some coping strategies are much more productive and effective than others. So, simply going to the fridge and eating as much as you can, or binging on something that you might like. That doesn't necessarily help, but there are other coping strategies. So learning about coping is really important. As I say, there are many different ways of finding a sort of better space and a place where those feelings can be managed. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to think about what parents and carers can do. And I've already, in a sense, been exploring that as I've been talking about managing emotion and so on. I think that it's a common experience for carers and parents of this age group is that they don't have a role anymore. And that's because it seems evident that teenagers much prefer to talk to their friends. There's this whole issue of not responding, of silence, of breakdown in communication, and so on. And that gives the message that adults don't matter, adults aren't important. And we know that the research shows that confidence of parents in their role takes a huge dip when puberty comes along, when the teenage years happen. And so it is really important, I think, to find ways of supporting parents and carers. And as I said, when I talked about the S of stage, that parents and carers are hugely significant. We know all the studies on outcomes for teenagers show that the outcomes are better when the key adults are engaged and involved and supportive. That is probably the most important factor in helping young people through this stage. Of course, there are other support structures as well, and parents and carers are not the only factors that make a difference. So other relatives, all of you will know that sometimes teenagers are better able to talk to an aunt or a grandparent than they are to their parents. So the family network plays a key role, but friends too. And we mustn't underestimate the importance of friends. Friends are the first port of call very often when you are distressed. And so supporting your teenagers' friends and social network also is very important. One of the things that adults struggle with when faced with challenging behavior, or when things look bleak for teenagers, is what's normal, what's to expect. Is this depression for example, what any normal teenager would be going through. Where do you draw the line? How do you make sense of some of the behavior? Is it just normal teenagers, or is it something I really need to worry about? And there are some guidelines as to how adults can really make sense of this. And there are a number of things to keep in mind. So first of all, if the behavior that you're worried about is interfering with either health or education, then that is very important. So if there's clear weight loss, if they're not sleeping, or if they're, someone who's managing school perfectly well suddenly isn't able to do that, then that's one important indicator. The second thing is, has behavior changed? So is a young person who was sociable and had lots of friends suddenly doesn't, has lost all their friends? Someone who had a hobby and really interested in something suddenly loses interest. So those sorts of things are important. Obviously, changes in behavior or health-related aspects of life, those are key things. And then the last thing is the behavior that you're worried about, is it really affecting the rest of the family? And that is an important indicator. Parents and carers sometimes feel they can't go there because, that's something we've just got to live with. But actually, it is an important factor. So if the behavior, whatever it is affecting other siblings or the adults in the family, then that is something that does need to be taken into account. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There are ways. I know that sometimes it seems that there's lots of information for parents of babies and toddlers, but not very much for teenagers. But in fact, there is information out there. There are some good websites, and there are some books as well. But don't be afraid to talk. I think one of the things for adults is that they often feel, as I said at the beginning, they may feel ashamed. They may feel that they're not doing it right, and therefore they can't really talk to anyone. But it is really important to be open and to get support from others. It may not necessarily be professional support, but do talk to others. And if you feel that things are really difficult, then there are professionals, your GP, there are helplines and so on. And I think the last thing is that I want to talk about is related to this, is how to know when to intervene. And sometimes it's very difficult because what you feel is that the teenager is pushing you away. And if you're offering to help, a teenager may say no, may get even more angry, or may even become more depressed and anxious, or other aspects of behavior. And I think that that's a very tricky role for parents. But the key factor is that you, as the close adult or adults, are the ones who can and should offer that support. So don't be put off. Do say to your young person, it is your responsibility as an adult to make sure that they are safe and that they are okay. And however much they may indicate that they don't want you interfering, it is your role and your responsibility. So I think that however hard that may be, do keep in mind that your role is the absolutely central role. And however much the teenager's behavior may indicate the opposite, there are good reasons why they're trying to push you away. But we mustn't be put off by that. So I hope that what I've talked about will give you some idea both about well-being and the sorts of ways in which we can help young people be healthy and feel good about themselves, but also something about how to manage things when they aren't going as well as you would hope, when young people are struggling. So I wish you all the best, and I hope this film has been helpful to you. Thank you.